The smoke that steals more than breath. He lit a cigarette before he spoke. His fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the way habits settle into bones. Alexei was 66, former long-haul trucker, stubborn, good-hearted, and tired in a way that no nap could fix. He took a slow drag, exhaled, and said, "I think I'm done." Document. As a man, I mean, something's gone cold down there. My wife, she pretends not to notice, but I see it. I feel it. I let the silence hold for a moment, because I knew what he was really asking. Is it over for me? And I knew the answer. No, Alexei. I said gently. But that cigarette in your hand, that's not just costing you your breath. It's costing you connection. And maybe more than you realize. See, most men think smoking just affects the lungs. They picture the warnings on cigarette packs, diseased tissue, coughing fits, cancer, but they never show you what it does to your nights. Your confidence, your closeness. They don't show you the woman who starts wondering if she's the problem, or the man who rolls over and says nothing, not because he doesn't care, but because his body doesn't respond, and he doesn't know why. Smoking steals slowly. Not just years from your life, but the moments that make life worth living. And the cruel part? It doesn't strike all at once. It starts quietly. A delay here, a failed attempt there, an excuse, a shrug, a silence that deepens with every drag. That I've seen it too many times. The it begins in the blood. Nicotine and carbon monoxide damage the lining of your arteries, the soft, flexible tubes that deliver blood to every part of your body, including the most private parts. And here's what most men don't realize. Those arteries are smaller than the ones near your heart. Much smaller. So when things start to clog, slow down, or harden, they show up in your intimacy first, before the heart attack, before the warning signs. The body whispers, something's wrong. But we're not trained to hear it. We're trained to push through, to tough it out, to blame age, or stress, or her. I remember another patient, Dimitro, 72, still walked every morning, still read every night. But he came in one day, winded from just climbing the stairs. His test showed early signs of vascular damage. It's probably just getting old, he laughed. Then, as he reached for the door, he paused. "Doc," he said, his voice softer, "I haven't been able to perform with my wife. It's been almost a year." I didn't say anything because, well, I thought maybe it was in my head. It wasn't. It was in his arteries. 3 decades of smoking. The damage was real, but not irreversible. He quit. Not overnight. There were cravings, relapses, moments of frustration. But he stayed with it. And a few months later, he came back, smiling in that quiet way men do when something important returns. "It's not like it was," he said. "But it's not gone. And neither am I." That's the part no one tells you. When you quit, yes, you breathe easier. But more than that, you begin to feel again. Your skin comes alive. Your confidence softens. You reach out, and you mean it. And she notices, because intimacy isn't just about blood flow. It's about presence. It's about being there, not just physically, but emotionally, attentively, fully. Smoking dulls that. It doesn't just tighten your vessels. It tightens your willingness to try. It whispers, "You're not enough." And too many men believe it, but it's not true. Alexei quit 3 weeks after our talk. He grumbled, cursed, tried patches, chewed gum like it owed him money. But he stuck with it. The day he came back to my office, he wore a clean shirt, cologne I hadn't smelled in years, and a small, proud smirk. "I brought flowers home," he said. "Just because." She smiled like she used to. And that's when I knew this wasn't about quitting smoking. It was about starting over. Because every cigarette you don't smoke, it's not just saving your lungs, it's making room for touch, for laughter, for the spark you thought was gone, but maybe, just maybe, was only buried under a little too much ash. When pleasure goes numb, the first thing that usually returns, if a man quits smoking, isn't the breath, or the appetite, or even the stamina. It's the quiet hunger to be close again, not just physically, but soulfully. That may sound strange, even poetic, but it's what I've witnessed over and over. I've seen men who hadn't touched their wives in months suddenly reach for a hand at dinner. Not because their testosterone levels soared overnight, but because the fog had lifted, because something real had come back, and that something is presence. Nicotine doesn't just narrow your blood vessels. It rewires your brain. Quietly. Consistently. Like rain wearing away at stone. It hijacks your reward system, the delicate circuitry in your brain that lets you feel joy, pleasure, desire. Over time, the brain stops responding to real connection. It becomes addicted to the sharp, fast spike of dopamine that comes with each puff. But the price? The softer joys, the ones that take time, emotion, vulnerability, those begin to fade. A warm glance, a gentle touch, a slow Sunday morning wrapped in arms instead of smoke. They don't register the same way anymore. I remember one man. Petro, 69, musician, widower. He started smoking more after his wife passed. Said it helped with the silence. But what he didn't realize was that it was replacing something else. That he met someone new. Kind woman, gentle eyes. They began seeing each other, holding hands, talking long walks. But the moment things moved toward intimacy, something inside him froze. It's like I wanted to feel, he told me, but nothing happened. My body didn't respond. My mind went blank. I felt embarrassed. Not because I didn't want her, but because I couldn't feel her. We talked for over an hour. Not about prescriptions, but about patterns. About the emotional numbness that smoking had created, like a glaze over his senses he hadn't felt in years. Not really. He had distracted himself into survival, but not into connection. I told him something I'll tell you now. The body wants to come back. The brain wants to feel again. But it takes time and space. You have to remove the noise before you can hear the music again. When Petro stopped smoking, the first weeks were rough. He called me once in the middle of the night, frustrated and panicked. I feel too much, he said. The memories, the loneliness, it's all hitting me. Yes, I said. That's the sign you're healing. Numbness isn't peace. It's absence. And when feeling returns, it's raw. But it's also real. Within 2 months, he noticed something surprising. He laughed more. Food tasted better. Music moved him. And one night, after dinner, when she touched his hand, he felt alive in a miracle drug. No expensive therapy, just the slow reawakening of a man who gave his nervous system a chance to reset. Because that's the hidden truth behind smoking and intimacy. It's not just about the act. It's about presence, feeling, emotional closeness. Nicotine numbs it all. And when you quit, the lights come back on. Slowly, but beautifully. So if you're a man who's wondering why things aren't working, not just in your body, but in your heart, in your connection, consider this. Maybe it's not age. Maybe it's not stress. Maybe it's just time to let your brain and your soul remember how to feel. Not instantly, not dramatically, but honestly. And in that honesty, you may find something far more lasting than performance. You may find your way back to presence. The distance between two people in the same bed, they don't always say it out loud. The women, I mean, they don't always ask why he rolls away, or why his body doesn't respond, or why touch, once so easy, so instinctive, now feels like something they have to earn. They don't ask because they think they already know the answer. He's tired. He's older. Maybe I'm not as attractive anymore. But what they don't know, what most men won't say, is that inside, he's often screaming. Not from lack of desire, from shame. Because when his body doesn't answer the call, he starts to believe it's broken. He believes he is broken. And in that silence, he pulls away, not just physically, but emotionally. And smoking? It becomes the excuse, the escape, the thing he reaches for instead of her. I remember a couple, Ivan and Alina, married 41 years. Faithful, kind. But something had gone cold. Alina told me during one of our sessions, he used to hold me. Even when nothing happened, he would hold me. Now he just goes outside. Ivan smoked 6, 7 times a day. Said it was for stress, for routine. But I knew better. He was retreating, not because he didn't care, but because every attempt at intimacy ended in frustration. Not just hers, his. And each cigarette became a wall point, one more layer of smoke between them. I sat with Ivan alone one day and asked, what would happen if you didn't go outside the next time you felt the urge? He looked at me, a long, tired look. I'd have to face her, he said, and then softer. I'm scared she'll see the man I've become. What he didn't understand, and what so many men don't, is that she already sees him, not the failure, the ache, the effort, the love that never stopped, even as the body changed. But she can't reach him if he keeps hiding behind smoke. When Ivan started cutting back, something shifted. It wasn't fast. It wasn't easy, But Alina told me she noticed. Not in the bedroom. At the breakfast table. He looked at me, she said. Like he used to. Not past me. At me. The thing is, quitting smoking isn't just a medical decision. It's an emotional one that because every cigarette avoided is a chance to reach out. To speak instead of sulk. To touch instead of withdraw. To say, without words, I'm still here. I'm still yours. And that's intimacy, not performance. Not pressure. Not perfection. Presence. Sometimes, when I sit with couples in their 60s and 70s, I can feel how much they still love each other, but how far apart they've drifted, and often, it started with something small. A health scare. A failed moment of closeness. A cigarette outside instead of a conversation inside. Until one day, they stop reaching. But it doesn't have to end there, because if the distance was built slowly, it can be crossed slowly. 2.1. Breath at a time. Point 1 honest word. Point 1 hand that doesn't flinch. And one small, sacred decision to put out the cigarette and light the connection instead. Smoke in the silence of grief. Some men don't smoke for pleasure. They smoke to forget. To quiet the ache that never really left. To fill the silence after someone's gone or something has ended. A marriage, a job, a version of themselves. They no longer recognize that. I saw this in Stepan, 75. A former engineer, a widower for 8 years. He came to me about sleep, or rather, the lack of it. I fall asleep for an hour, he said. Then I wake up, and it's like my body's still waiting for something. He smoked half a pack at night, just sitting by the window, watching the dark, not really thinking, not really feeling, just being suspended. That we talked for a long time before he mentioned her. His wife, Nadia, she passed quickly, he said. One day we were arguing about the dishes. 2 weeks later, I was holding her hand in the hospital. And after that, I started smoking again, he said. After 30 years of being clean. It just helped. I didn't scold him. I never do. Because sometimes, the cigarette isn't about addiction. It's about ritual. About memory. About trying to hold something that's already gone. But here's the tragedy. While the cigarette numbs the pain, it also numbs everything else. And slowly, it robs the man of what he still has left to feel. Stepan didn't want to date again. Didn't want to touch anyone. He said that part of life was over. But the truth? He hadn't grieved fully. He hadn't let his heart speak. He had let smoke speak for him. When we began the process of quitting, I told him something hard. You may feel worse before you feel better. But that's not failure. That's healing. The first few weeks, he was irritable, restless. He said he felt like his chest was full of static. Then, one day he cried. In my office. Quietly. The kind of tears that come from somewhere old. I dreamed of her, he said. She was laughing. I hadn't heard that sound in years. That night, he didn't smoke. And for the first time in 8 years, he wrote in a journal. 1 page. Just a few words. I still miss you. But I think I want to live again. That was the beginning, not of forgetting, but of opening. Because when you stop numbing, life returns. Slowly, clumsily, but truthfully. And sometimes, someone new walks into your life. Not to replace the one you lost, but to meet the man you've become. That happened to Stepan. 6 months later, he met Helena at a community center. They started with chess, then coffee, then evenings at the park. No pressure. No grand declarations, just warmth. And one night, he said something to me I'll never forget. She reached for my hand, and I didn't flinch. I didn't feel guilty. I just felt ready. That's what quitting smoking gave him. Not just cleaner lungs, but a second chance at love. Because healing isn't about going back. It's about going forward, with gentleness, with honesty, and with the courage to feel again. And that, my friends, is what every man deserves. The fire that pretends to be strength. When you're a young man, no one tells you what silence costs. That you're taught to be tough, to hold it in, to show up, work hard, don't complain. And if life gets heavy, you light a cigarette, look away, and say, I'm fine. But as the years pass, that silence doesn't go away. It grows. It settles into your body, your back, your chest, your hands, your bedroom. And often, the cigarette becomes the last piece of armor a man thinks he has left. It says, I'm still in control. But here's the truth I've seen over 35 years. In medicine, most men who smoke in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, they're not trying to look cool, they're trying to cope with pain, with loneliness, with fear of being seen as weak. And nothing threatens that more than a body that stops working the way it used to, especially when it comes to intimacy. The cruel trick is this. Smoking gives the illusion of control while quietly taking it away. I think of Victor, 68, former firefighter. 2 heart attacks, still smoked, still proud, still deflecting. I'd rather die with a cigarette than live without one, he joked. But underneath the bravado, I saw it, the fatigue, the frustration, the ache of not being able to hold his wife the way he used to. He told me. She says it's okay, that she loves me anyway. But I see her turn away when I light up. I know it hurts her. What he didn't know, what most men don't, is that when your partner sees you smoke, she doesn't just think of the smell. She thinks of the risk. She wonders how many more years she'll have you. She counts the pills in your drawer. She waits through the night, listening to your breath, wondering if you'll still be there in the morning. And sometimes she doesn't say anything because she's tired of begging. That's the other cost of smoking. The one no label warns you about. It erodes trust. Not because you're a bad man, but because your body becomes unpredictable. Your presence becomes unreliable. And your promises, even when made with love, start to feel uncertain. Oh, what does it mean to be strong? Really? To keep pretending? To cling to habits that shrink your life? Or to say, I need help. I want to change. I still have something left to give. Victor quit smoking not because I convinced him, but because his grandson drew a picture. It was a family portrait, childlike, messy, joyful, and there he was, missing. I asked him where I was. Victor told me. He said, "You're in the sky, Papa." Like when people go away. That broke him, and that saved him, because strength isn't never breaking. It's choosing to build again. When Victor quit, his breathing improved. His blood pressure dropped. But more than that, his tenderness returned. He started dancing again. Slowly, gently. He held his wife's hand and didn't let go. And in the middle of one appointment, months later, he said something I'll never forget. I used to smoke to feel strong. Now I cry in front of my wife, and she holds me. And I think, maybe that's stronger. That's what this journey is about. Not willpower, not punishment, but becoming whole again, piece by piece, breath by breath, moment by moment. And if you're reading this, still wondering if it's too late, let me say this clearly. It's not that you're not broken. You're healing. When the ashes clear, they always expect the cravings, the mood swings, the restlessness, the appetite. But what they never expect is the joy. It doesn't come all at once. Not like the hit of nicotine. It sneaks in. The breath you don't have to fight for. In the morning light that feels softer. In the smile from your partner when you laugh, really laugh. For the first time in years, that's the part no one talks about enough. Not the withdrawal, but the return. The return of the senses. The return of attention. The return of feeling. Because when you quit smoking, it's not just that something leaves. It's that something returns. I remember a man named Yaroslav, 70, former math teacher. Smoked since university. Quit only after a mild stroke scared his daughter into tears. I thought quitting would feel like punishment, he said. But I didn't realize how much I had stopped feeling. He described one moment, a simple dinner, just soup and bread, his wife's cooking. He said it was the first time in years he noticed the taste of parsley. I didn't even know. She still used it. That night, he reached for her hand. Not with pressure, not with performance, just presence, and she cried. Not because she missed the old Yaroslav, but because, finally, he had come back. That's the thing about smoking. It doesn't just dull your health. It dulls your life. And when you quit, yes, your blood pressure improves. Your circulation heals. Your risk of heart disease begins to drop almost immediately. But more than that, you remember how to live. You remember how to laugh without coughing, how to walk without pausing, how to kiss without the taste of ash. You remember what it's like to lie next to someone and breathe fully, freely, deeply. Not just as a biological function, but as a declaration, I'm still here. And maybe, just maybe, better than I've been in years. I saw this in Anatoly, 73. He hadn't touched his wife in 2 years. Not because he didn't want to, but because he was ashamed of what smoking had done to his body. When he quit, he didn't expect miracles. He just wanted to sleep better, to climb the stairs without fear. But 2 months in, something shifted. He bought her a scarf, took her to a concert, sat beside her, touched her knee, and said, "You look beautiful tonight." And she looked at him, eyes wide, as if seeing him again for the first time. I thought I lost that part of you, she whispered. And he replied, so did I. But maybe it was just buried. That's what quitting gives back, not just health, but the space to be human again. To feel warmth. To say what you mean. To offer touch not as apology, but as invitation. To choose life, not as a grand gesture, but as 1,000 small ones. That is so. If you're thinking about quitting, not because a doctor said so, but because a part of you misses yourself, listen to that part. It knows. And it's not too late. You haven't missed your chance. The breath is still there. The moment is still waiting, and so is the joy. Back to the beginning, but not the end. When Alexei first sat in my office, cigarette in hand, he believed something was over, his confidence, his connection, his manhood. What he didn't know, what most men don't, is that what was fading wasn't identity. It was oxygen. It was circulation. It was the fragile but beautiful machinery that intimacy requires, and that smoking slowly unravels, day by day. But here's the truth we came to together. It wasn't too late. And it never is, if you're still breathing. Over these 7 parts, I've told you stories of men who walked away from smoke and back toward their partners, toward their strength, toward themselves. But let me speak to you now, not as a doctor, as a man who has sat with thousands of others. If you're still smoking, I don't see failure. I see someone who has survived heartbreak, stress, fear, loneliness. I see someone who's tried to stay afloat the only way they knew how. But now, maybe it's time to come home, not just to a house, not just to a person. Your body. Your breath. Your ability to touch and be touched, not through smoke, but through skin. I've watched men grow old and vibrant. I've seen love rediscovered in marriages long thought finished. I've seen hands that trembled from withdrawal learn to hold again, not just cigarettes, but faces, hearts, futures, because quitting isn't just about removing something bad. It's about restoring what was good. When you quit, you don't just avoid disease. You create space for closeness, for laughter, for long walks, for quiet mornings that don't smell like ash. You get back the power to say, I want to be here. For her. For him. For me. And when your partner sees you trying, really trying, something beautiful happens. They soften, they reach, they trust again. Because what they've always wanted, more than your strength or performance, is your presence. So maybe. You start today. Point 1 less cigarette. Point 1 more breath. Point 1 deeper conversation. And over time, not in a flash, not in a movie scene, but in the slow unfolding of your real life, something shifts. Point 1 morning, your partner will roll over, touch your shoulder, and smile. And you'll smile back, not with shame, but with pride, because you didn't give up. You came back, and in that quiet, sacred return, you'll realize the spark was never gone. It was only waiting.